Some soldiers die heroes on the battlefield. Others die in the shadows behind the lines, condemned by their own army. Often forgotten or judged harshly for more than a century. Private Alfred Thomas Ansted was one of those 300 British and Commonwealth soldiers executed for desertion during the First World War. But behind the sentence is a story of a man who served bravely, was wounded, broke under relentless shellfire, and paid the ultimate price, not at enemy hands, but at dawn by a firing squad of his own comrades. This is his story. Alfred Thomas Ansted was born in 1887 in Northolt, Middlesex. He was the son of Henry John and Mary Ann Ansted. Before the First World War began, Alfred had already served in the army. When war broke out in 1914, he was quickly recalled from the reserve, like so many veterans whose lives were upended overnight. On the 9th of February 1915, he was sent to France with the 4th Battalion Royal Fusiliers. He saw fierce fighting early on and was wounded in action. After spending months recovering in hospital, he returned to his unit and continued to serve in the trenches, mud, fear, shells day and night. 15 months after arriving in France, in May 1916, Alfred Ansted deserted for the first time. Shortly after his disappearance, another soldier from his battalion was caught and executed for the same crime. A clear warning to any man thinking of slipping away from the horror. Alfred was found, returned to his unit, and allowed to continue serving under a suspended sentence. But the strain of war did not ease. That summer, the Battle of the Somme erupted, one of the deadliest campaigns the British Army would ever fight. In August 1916 at Guillemont, with the ground torn apart by shellfire and men falling all around him, Ansted finally broke. He deserted again. This time, he did not flee far. He hid near the lines for over 2 months, alone and hunted. Eventually, exhausted, he surrendered himself to the military foot police at Corbie. At his court-martial in November, he tried to explain that the relentless bombardments had shattered his nerve. His earlier wound and long service in the trenches were not taken into account. Officially, he was found guilty of desertion in the face of the enemy, one of the gravest offences in the British Army at the time. He was sentenced to be shot at dawn. Around this time, Reverend Martin Andrews joined the battalion as a chaplain. Before becoming an officer, Andrews had served as a private and a stretcher bearer. He knew what terror and blood looked like. He had landed at Gallipoli and seen enough horror to harden any man's heart. But nothing he said revolted him more than witnessing an execution by his own side. It was bitterly cold that November. After the ritual was carried out, as Ansted's body was buried, the pioneer sergeant confided to Reverend Andrews that Private Ansted had once been a brave and steady soldier. When Andrews asked him why no one had defended him at trial, the sergeant had no answer. From that moment on, Captain Andrews vowed that if ever another soldier faced a firing squad, he would stand with him in court and act as a condemned man's friend. On the 15th of November 1916, Private Alfred Thomas Ansted, just 29 years old, was taken from his cell at dawn. He was tied to a post and faced a line of rifles held by fellow British soldiers, men who might have shared his rations with him just months before. When the shots rang out, a life ended not by enemy fire, but by the harsh justice of wartime discipline. His body was laid to rest at Bertrancourt Military Cemetery. His headstone bears the simple words, "Peace, perfect peace." In those days, men shot for desertion were denied medals and official memorial plaques. Families received no bronze next to kin penny, no public honour, and only silence and shame. But in a twist of fate, Alfred Thomas Ansted's family somehow received one. To this day, no one knows for certain how it was granted. Perhaps a clerical oversight, or an unspoken act of mercy for a family who had already suffered enough. It remains a rare, perhaps unique, reminder that even in an age of harsh military justice, compassion sometimes found its way through. This is Alfred's plaque, the silent medal he was never meant to have, now telling a story he could not. Alfred Ansted was one of more than 300 British and Commonwealth men executed for desertion during the First World War, many of them young, battle-weary, wounded and mentally scarred in a time when shell-shock was barely understood. Today, they are no longer dishonoured. Their names appear on memorials alongside the men who fell in battle. They remind us that the cost of war is not just paid in medals won, but in human spirits broken. If you found this story meaningful, please consider subscribing and sharing it. And if your family has a connection to the men who fought, fell, or were lost in silence, share their stories in the comments, because remembrance must include them all, lest we forget. If you like listening to the stories of the history of those who came before, then please give the video a like and subscribe to keep updated about future videos of the history of those who came before.